Welcome to Scramble Game Show. Today we have a candidate who's running for the county legislative position. And as you know, we have been doing several interviews this month, and next month will be the election day. So generally in October, we like to devote our time to interview candidates and people seeking public office. I think this is very important to the communities, to people, to know as much as possible about the candidates they're going to vote for. I think nowadays, as you know, our government function is not doing so well, as you probably just now experiencing or seeing that our federal government is being shut down, right? When a government gets shut down, certain things cannot get done. And certain things cannot be done because it's not legal to do it. Sometimes simple things to get a certificate or get a permit or things like that would always get delayed. Now, why is this happening? And I think it's partly because the people we elected into, whether it's Congress, whether it's in a position to decide things, are really not doing their job. I think you see as this shutdown that people complain about, it's a Democrat's fault or Republican's fault, and I think it's everybody's fault. I mean, a president is elected to lead the country, and one of his qualifications or ability is to lead and work with people and get people to work for him. If Congress doesn't work with the president, it's the president's fault as well. You can't blame that it's Congress' fault. Same token, you can say about all the Congress people. You cannot just say this is all president's fault. You are elected to represent the people. You are trying to serve the people. I don't believe anybody wants to send somebody there and say, oh, go, shut down the government for me, right? So enough said about that. Just vent my sort of anger seeing what's happening. It's just not right. So we will come back to our local situation, and the election is coming November 5th. The county government is being re-elected. As you know, that the county executive is right now, Rob Astorino is running for re-election. And of course, part of the legislator usually have few people get elected in a rotation basis. So today, our guest is Mr. Greg Kane, who's running for the county legislator. Let's welcome Greg and talk to him and see what he has to say. Okay. Hi, Greg.
Nice. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming to our show. Yeah, we like to have our families and children, kids, even they don't vote, they should know about, the political figures that they voted or elected into the office. And we want to talk to you about why you want to run, what do you want to do, what are the issues and problems like that. And you probably heard what I just opening remarks. I'm pretty sort of angry about a government being shut down. I don't think anybody's like to see that happen.
No. First I have to explain myself. I'm a 9/11 victim, so my voice breaks up, and that's why I always have to have water with me, because I have this all these issues with it. Mm-hmm. I want to get that out.
Oh, sure. If you want more, we'll get you more
okay,
water.
No problem. Yep. You hit on the first topic is the Washington mess. Now, with one of the obstacles is Obamacare. Mm-hmm. And if the Congress doesn't want Obamacare, and they want to be exempt from it, if it's not good enough for them, it's not good enough for the people. Mm-hmm. So that said, we need to have, if you want to make health care affordable, there's other ways of doing it. This is not what I think is the right way to do things and make things affordable. In Westchester County, now we have this, not to sound too disrespectful, but we have somewhat of a clown show in Washington. This is, as you highlighted, this is dysfunction, and it's not acceptable. We also have Albany, which is a dysfunctional entity, and it's very not even promoted. It's very well known. Now we have Westchester County government, and unfortunately, when you have Westchester County government, you're following the same wave of dysfunction, and we need to bring. That's one of the reasons why I'm running. I never wanted to get involved in politics, and I mentioned before I'm a 9/11 victim. That's when I said to myself, I had to step up to the plate and do what's right. My father was involved in politics. I grew up in North Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow. It's called Sleepy Hollow now. And I understood back then that politics was a dysfunctional entity and it's a dirty business. But after 9/11, yeah, I had to realize that I have the opportunity to change something, improve something. You have to step up to the plate and do it. So this is not something I'm doing for my ego. It's something that I feel that someone has to do this and right these wrongs. In Westchester County, we have the biggest item right now is affordable housing lawsuit. Now, my challenge to that is that it's based on fraud. This is not just my interpretation. This is what the Judge Cotto, C-O-T-O, she was the same judge that sat on the Enron case. She was, she enforced the rule of law where we found out that Enron was doing fraudulent things and held those people accountable. I want to see the people that committed the fraud in Westchester County held accountable and where that money went. Simple. Now, there's no discrimination in Westchester and Northern and where we live. You know, you can afford to live there, you can afford to live there. I don't even see my neighbors. I see my one neighbor where I used to have a shared driveway with, I see them once a week, if that. So, I mean, there are couples that are different from me that live behind me, and I never see these people, so it doesn't make any difference to us. I grew up in North Tarrytown. There's a great spectrum. My ex-wife was Spanish. That means my children are Spanish. So it doesn't mean anything. It's just smoke and mirrors. I don't like the fact that the federal government, and you said before that how dysfunctional they are, now they're coming into Westchester and promoting their dysfunction onto us. On a case of fraud, we need to find out who committed the fraud, where the money went, and why should everybody be held accountable to the same standards of some criminal act. And my opponent referenced the Yonkers desegregation lawsuit 25 years ago or something.
Yeah, that started the whole thing, yeah.
But is Yonkers better off for that? If you talk to, we have a friend, we have a similar friend, Bill. I don't want to say his last name, but Bill lived in Yonkers and explained that the people were taking the money and using to fix up certain entities that were politically connected. And that's how the federal government got into there and challenged it. But I don't know, I have never heard of anybody ever been, you know, who committed the fraud or committed the crime, ever held accountable for that back in Yonkers. So why should we today allow, and we saw that Yonkers, it didn't improve the city of Yonkers with that desegregation lawsuit. In most people's opinion, I don't live there, I never lived there, they've told me it made things worse. And this is from a spectrum of all types of people. It's not selectively white people, this is from all people. So, so they're afraid of that model happening, and we got to settle. Well, the settlement was wrong there, it's wrong again. So why should we, two wrongs don't make a right. We shouldn't be doing this. So there's a lot of things in Westchester County that needs to be addressed, and we got to make things affordable. You at one time worked for IBM. Well, IBM's workforce, 65% of it is outside the continental United States, right? And that's growing every year. It's not like it's you know, this is moving. IBM doesn't just necessarily mean international business machine. It stands for I've been moved, and it's going to move out of here because it's too expensive. We have to bring this down to reality, and obviously we committed to things we can afford. You know, we all have budgets. We all have to live within our means, and so does government, and so does the show in Washington, so does the show in Albany, and so does Westchester. We have to follow. We have to set a new precedent. And if you look at it, Washington has stated numerous times that Westchester is the.
Well, I think you put, you know, sort of some points are well said here, but I think the key one, whatever government wants to do, should be do it for the people, and for the people locally. I mean, you mentioned that if New York State is not desirable for any company to stay, they move out. That's because the government hasn't done things right, for the company to stay here. Now, same thing, this Westchester situation here. If you are forcing something or doing something to Westchester, and Westchester people don't like it, I don't see their logic.
Well, there is no logic. It's somebody just bullying their way around Westchester, and it's not acceptable. And I want to push back. My opponent voted for that
they say,
settlement.
If we put in whatever affordable housing, so on, and these housing will basically offered for let's call it immigrants. I mean, other state people coming to
Well,
Westchester.
it will not be marketed to Westchester County residents.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah.
And people don't
Why?
understand. Well, that's wrong, because the lawsuit was brought against Westchester County from a New York City
Complaint, yeah.
complaint. So it will not. It will be marketed to the Bronx, Brooklyn, Bridgeport, Connecticut, and once it hits the internet.
Yeah.
I've been at a county legislature.
Anybody, of course, can.
Yeah, and so the Westchester County residents will be the last online. It's not workforce housing. It's for people outside of Westchester. So it's not even helping the workforce we have here. So it's a bad thing all around. This settlement. I worked on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and I have similarities between my opponent and I. I was in the financial markets on the New York Stock Exchange. He's a financial planner. At the New York Stock Exchange, your word was your bond. I'm not saying anything negative about him, but you had to be accurate about your pricing of whatever you were trading.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you didn't last long down there. It lasted for 30 years, and what happened was it was an arena, it became a theater, and then it kind of dissolved. It's a tenth of what it used to be. So you want somebody that's going to be competitive, that's going to stand up to the bullies of Washington and try to improve its situation. You can't sit back and let this go. You should never have settled this from the get-go because there's fraud involved. We need to know who committed fraud. And I default back to Wall Street, the trading floor of New York Stock Exchange. The last years I was down there, I was a customer specialist. In other words, when there was a problem on the trading floor of New York Stock Exchange, all across the street, I would talk to the CEO of Mariel Seabird or something, a head of a company, and the pricing was not, they thought they're disadvantaged. We had a problem daily with the couple of the other exchanges, the Cincinnati Exchange and NASDAQ Exchange. And what would happen, they would trade through, they would print something below or above our markets, outside the market parameters. In other words, if we were bidding $1 and the offer is $1.10 and the trade would go on at 75 cents, these people who were bidding $1 want to know why they didn't get satisfied at 75 cents. So I would have to find out what happened. But the person who put the trade on at 75 cents that was traded away was Bernie Madoff. So here, when we would complain daily to Market Surveillance and the Securities Exchange Commission about these trades, and they said, no, you're wrong, they did it, it was out of sequence, yada, yada, yada. So we complained about this man daily, and nobody did anything. When you have a case of fraud and nobody knows who committed it or where the money went, we're all going to be victimized by this. So this is the points that we have to bring. We have to bring accountability. We were talking about the dysfunction of the political parties, the political system before. These what we have to. You're not going to have closure. We're not going to have closure to this settlement if we don't know who caused it. I mean, we're just opening the faucet and just letting it run and say, well, somewhere around here, it doesn't make sense. So these are the kind of things that...
So certainly I can understand that where you're coming from, that this whole problem it was basically either accepted or partially created by the previous administration. Yeah,
But some of those people that were there, the
Yeah.
legislators, and they took advantage of this
and
money, are
legislator-
still there.
And of course, the previous county executives.
County executive, county legislators, some of the county legislators are still there. And there's bureaucrats that are still there that did not, we haven't found out. So we need to know what happened to that money. Another thing is that Northern Westchester, my opponent has said that a lot of money comes from Northern Westchester and goes down south, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, I beg to differ. I think I would stand up and make sure that doesn't happen. We need accountability. We know where the money goes. We don't know where the money goes. And that's where I want to find out. I mean, you can't do it on the outside. I can make these pledges and stuff like that, but I need to get into the books and see where the money's going. If we're putting $10 down to down county and we're getting $2 back, and they're getting all the services. Rob Astorino was on. All the pools are south of 287. All the small pools. Everything north of it, the county doesn't own any swimming pools north of 287. So we're not getting our bang for our buck from up here. We need to get our money back. We don't mind paying and helping somebody out, but we don't want to be disadvantaged. If you talk to the people from Heritage Hills, our retirement community, they're the ones burdened most by this dysfunction of taxes.
So in your running door to door or meeting people and so on, is this sort of housing issue the only issue?
No, that's not the only. That's the big issue, and then they also talk about the dysfunction of Washington and Albany.
Yeah.
That's a big Westchester issue. That people aren't happy, and then they're not happy about how much it costs to live here. And I even try to explain to people who are like-minded like myself. I'm saying if they they don't think a company pays their fair share of taxes. Well, if they move out of here and they're paying, let's say, $100, but they only have to pay $10 in North Carolina. They're being burdened. The company's profit is going to be suffer, and that's your pension money. And that's how a company makes money. The stock has a value. So these things all play. It's a domino effect. One thing affects the next. They'll argue, oh well, these executives make all this money, and they use General Motors. Executives make $30 million, and the guy driving a forklift make $80,000. Well, what happened to the stockholder? That's your pension money, your bonds. The bonds. What happened to all that money that went into? People lost out. That's the retirement. So these are things that you have to challenge. You can't just let these things go idle and let the media and our elected officials promote these. Everything's okay. Just ignore that going on over there. These are things that affect. We're in a society. We are.
Have some water.
Yeah. We have a boom and bust in economics. We had a boom. Now we're in a bust cycle. We can't meet these obligations, the government obligations. They make crazy obligations, and the government is not getting any smaller. Case in point is Mayor Bloomberg. This is not Greg Kane. This is Mayor Bloomberg stating that New York City can become Detroit if it doesn't get their things.
Yeah, it almost happened before. So.
Oh yeah, it almost happened in the '70s, but this is Mayor Bloomberg. So this is not Greg Kane. So this is the anchor of the tri-state areas, New York City. If he's warning, now you got to think who Mike Bloomberg is. One, he's a billionaire. Two, he's the mayor of New York City. Three, he runs a media empire. Four, the media empire is a business media empire. So you have to respect that man's opinion. So these are kind of things that you need someone, everybody, there's no such thing. The Republicans, they want dirty air and dirty water. No, we don't. We got to live on the same planet as everybody else. We want to just make things accountable that we know we're not being disadvantaged.
Yeah, and the whole difference, of course, the issue about accountability, I think is very important. In the county level, certainly for the present county executive, I think things are moving, in the right direction. And a lot of things being reorganized, and there's certain waste being cut out, and the budget is, pretty reasonable.
Well, it's getting reasonable, but we have to be ahead of that curve. And the curve is that we're not just competing against Fairfield County or New Jersey, Nassau, or Suffolk. we're competing against North Carolina and then some other countries. I mean, I don't, I try to explain to people that I just took my car in to get fixed, right? Now, I know I pay probably a premium at this place, this car dealership, to get it done. But I go in there, it's done, it's guaranteed, and I don't have to go back. So I don't mind paying a premium for it, but I don't want to pay 10 times the going rate. I'll maybe pay 1%, 2% higher on a premium than what, Joe Fix-It Shop would go, because I know the guy will live up to his product. So if we have a great reputation in New York, but we have to live up to it, and we have to be responsible. You have this new mayor coming in New York City is a scary individual. He is.
You mean the
DeBasso?
challenger?
Yeah, well, the Democratic frontrunner he's a scary guy. I mean, that will affect Westchester County. And one of the, if you think about the geographics of Westchester County, we butt up against the Bronx. In my opinion, if you took it to all 5 boroughs, the Bronx is the neglected borough. That means that neglect will come north because they're trying to find the next best thing. So we have to stop it at the border. I mean, New York City really, there's places around that they dump on Westchester, and we let them get away with it. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to stand up the MTA tax. I want to fight that. I mean, I think that's a terrible burden on Westchester County. Taxation without representation. That's one of the founding arguments of this country. We need to do these things. We can challenge them on land rights, water rights, and things like that. There are avenues to do, but you got to have the gumption to do these things. And I don't think my opponent has that gumption. I mean, he's a nice guy. He's been there 15 years. He voted for every time that raised taxes, and one time he didn't, and he's getting a free pass. He's the one that voted for this affordable housing lawsuit that will change the whole definition, define Westchester County, and the clarity is as clear as mud, in case in point. And I just talked to a guy from Chappaqua today. They want to build a apartment complex between Sawmill River Parkway and the railroad tracks, a 5-story complex.
Yeah,
That's ruins the zoning. Now, if they allow that, if another builder wants to come in and build on something, hey, you let the federal government build this 5-story building, why can't I build it?
Exactly.
I mean, it changes the dynamics of the
that's the whole idea to have zoning.
Yeah, but where we live in Somers, you have sewer, well and sewers. How does that affect, the water? I mean, in New York City, I mean, these things all, one thing leads to another. Yeah. This is why you need somebody who's going to push back. You can't just let things go.
That's the reason that I think local people have to, make their own choice, their decisions, because the complexity involved, anything that is interrelated, traffic, water supply and
environmental issues. We moved here. My daughter lives down county now. She comes up here. She goes, it really is beautiful up here in the fall. There's the trees and everything. She goes, I'm always down county. I'm in buildings, but it's really pretty. I mean, I said, where have you been for the last 20 years? You grew up here. Now you recognize, well, I'm not here enough. But this is why we moved here. We moved here for the trees. We moved here for the open space. We moved here for the people that are similar to us. And they can be, we can afford it. It was not, nobody selectively said, no, you're not allowed. I mean, I grew up in North Tarrytown. You had slums all the way up to the Rockefeller Estate, and you had everything in between. It doesn't make a difference to me, and I don't think it does make a difference to anybody else. So, and then I married a Spanish girl, so it doesn't float with me. So, it's disingenuous to try to advance this agenda on this false pretense, and we don't know the facts of the situation. This is totally wrong. At what point in time do we pushback. My pushback was 9/11. I had to step up. I said, I got to do something. It doesn't work for me.
Well, let's take a little sort of diversion. You mentioned you're a 9/11 victim. Do you want to share?
Well, I actually yesterday I went to see my lawyer about it, and I had to explain to him that I was at the New York Stock Exchange. I was in a lockdown. We were not allowed to leave the building, and nobody thought the building was going to collapse. So we were all in the building, and you walked around because we were afraid that, you know, if this was a terrorist attack, what does it meant for the whole downtown area? So when the building started coming down, you know, you could see at 11 Wall, you can see the building, but then, you know, you ran into the building, you try to go as far away as you possibly can. And then it came down, and it was a cloud. The dust was something that surreal. It was phenomenal. It was just this huge cloud of white powder coming into the building, and people were literally covered. And I lost a couple of friends that day that were like just outside the door. They died of asphyxiation from the powder. So, you know, they were running and trying to get out of the way, and you know, this dust was so tremendous. It was going around the buildings and everything else. So it was bad. So, and then the second building went down. We were still in the lockdown, and they finally let us to go. And we had grabbed towels, we were dunked in water, and we had to walk outside with these things on, just covering our face. And it was like it was about an inch of snow outside, and you would see somebody drop like in front of you, an ambulance come by and just pick up the person and put them in the ambulance. And finally we got to about the South Sea Seaport, and it got a little better, the air quality, and then we walked up on the east side, and then we just kept on going. Every time you heard a plane or anything go by, you went in a doorway because you didn't know what was going on. Nobody knew what was going on. So then we got to Grand Central and got on a train, and was packed, and it was like a 2-hour train ride from then. But people don't realize it was not just that day. That day was horrendous. But going back there, that happened on Tuesday. Went back on the Monday. The air quality was still terrible. We had to wear dust masks at work, and a lot of people couldn't take the pressure. One thing that people don't understand is you took the subway from Grand Central, and at Brooklyn Bridge, you smelled death. And then Fulton Street, they put this pine stuff all over to try to reduce the stench of death. It's a horrible smell. You had a choice, either walking from Brooklyn Bridge with the dust mask on to work, or going through the stench of death and then getting off of Wall Street and then going to work. But the odors down there were horrendous from that event, and people don't know. A lot of people just see it on TV, but you smell it and breathe it. And what the doctors tell me is I consumed a witch's brew of toxins, and they settled in my cavities and my sinuses, my lungs. My vocal cords are scarred. My digestive system. For one reason or another, which is similar to other, I have muscular issues in my legs. I have circulation issues in more my left leg, my right leg. So these things, and another strange thing is with my kidneys, it produces an enzyme similar to what Lance Armstrong would take artificially. So I can get kind of, I swell up like my watch here sometimes will be super tight on me, and other days it'll be really loose on me. So my weight fluctuates 10, 15 pounds in a couple of days. It's very uncomfortable. So.
Yeah. So is there you're some medication?
Well, I decided they give me a lot of medications, and a lot of them had adverse effects, meaning that I have this cough, and I choke a lot, and it gets very, very painful. I can't certain things. I take certain things for acid reflux, so I don't have enough. The reflux doesn't come up and start me gagging. The sinuses, I take like I got something to help me with clearing the sinuses out, so they don't they don't bother me too much. The way the doctors described it to me, they had two cops. One cop was a marathon runner. The other one was just a regular cop, just for argument's sake. He was a donut eater. The one who's sick now is the marathon runner versus the one that the regular cop who was a donut eater. They theorized that his body, because he ate a lousier diet, his body was able to filter out the toxins versus the marathon runner was so clear that it got in there and it stuck to the cavities, and I used to be a lot more healthier. I used to do a lot more exercise than I do today. The exercise is a little tough, but it is what it is. I got to deal with this in life. If doctors told me they could, yes, he can rear his head, and you got my cough now.
No, that's I just.
I know, I'm only
slightly cold. Yeah.
So.
Well, and the election is pretty much in a few weeks around the corner now. So what's your plan at this point that visiting or?
Well, you need
campaign?
to just, these signs, okay, they have their place, but the real world, and George Pataki's told me this, a number of politicians. I ran into Sue Kelly the other day on the train. Sue Kelly used to come and see me at the stock exchange. When there was issues, the financial issues, she would come to the stock exchange and I would talk to her. And I had a good relationship. In fact, one thing, with George Pataki and Sue Kelly, they had one similar comment to me. He says, you can get all the signs you want, you can get all the commercials you want, but once you have to go out and talk and meet people. Greg Ball said the same thing to me. It's meeting people and connecting with them. I think that today, with all the media that's out there, you really can't meet people because now they've turned it off. If they want to find out about